Now, as I say, Peta Credlin joins us live from Melbourne in a moment. But big things happened today. Now, we've showed you over weeks and weeks about what was happening with hotel quarantine. We showed you a bloke called this guy, Chris Eccles. Chris Eccles is the Chief of Staff, essentially, the head bureaucrat in Daniel Andrews' Victoria. Well, put simply, he bullshitted to the hotel inquiry. Now, of course, it's not a royal commission, so it's not against the law to bullshit to this inquiry. Why do I say that he BS'd? Because remember, he said, I have no knowledge of who was making the ultimate phone calls that actually steered us away from police, like every other state, and towards private security guards, a decision that has led to hundreds of people dying and an entire city being locked down for longer than Wuhan, China. This is not small beer. Well, today he happened to remember, you know what? I did have a phone conversation. I had a phone conversation in those key 6 minutes that decide exactly who made the decisions here with the then Police Commissioner, Graham Ashton. That would be this gentleman here. Now, he was the one who, of course, was very keen to say police will not be involved, security guards should be involved here. But let's move this now that this bloke has gone for lying to the inquiry. That bloke retired, the police guy, the public servant. He has gone as a result of, well, amending his testimony. But now the focus is on another key person who was there and has knowledge of what happened in the 6 minutes that destroyed Victoria. This is the Chief of Staff to the Premier of Victoria. You have to find a search party out to try and find a photo of her, but there are ones here and there, but she has never been asked to go before an inquiry. No one ever, be it the parliamentary inquiry or the hotel inquiry, has asked this woman to give evidence. Not one organisation has asked her for a statement, and not one organisation has asked her to hand over her phone records, something that Peta Credlin noticed and asked the Premier about today.
Did your Chief of Staff have conversations with anyone in relation to private security before the National Cabinet decision was known publicly?
Well, I'm not quite sure.
Now, this is always the giveaway with Daniel Andrews. The way he doesn't answer the question is to pretend that he doesn't like the question that has been asked. He was more so focused on the silences, the words, all the rest. These are games that the rest of the media, generally speaking, they all take a giant step back. But you've seen this. Of the now 101 times this bloke has stood before the media, 99 times this guy has ducked and weaved, covered up by many of those inside the establishment of the press. But the strong, independent women who work not just for this channel but the newspapers and the broader company that I work for have been the ones that have held him to account. Peta Credlin is chief amongst them. She will join us in a moment or two's time to further explain what do we need to know about the Chief of Staff, what can we know about the Chief of Staff, and are the walls closing in on Andrews as it would seem. He's lost his health minister after he threw her under the bus. Several people have had to amend what they told Hotel Inquiry. The former police commissioner, well, he accidentally, or rather conveniently I should say, was able to skip out of the job and of course moved on to greener pastures. His right-hand man, he was defending just a couple of days ago, but then when the phone records started to come forward, guess what? He was gone. Will the Chief of Staff too, and to the Chief of Staff link back to the Premier? We'll get to that in a second. She's the lady of the moment. She's the lady who was able to get accountability out of the Victorian government in just one appearance at a press conference, while 99 before meant this bloke was able to slip and slide. Peta Credlin, congratulations on what you were able to do confronting this bloke, because if nothing else, there's two wonderful things that I love about you. One, you know how the sausage is made, and two, you don't give up. Result, the bloke who was apparently going to get off the hook, was apparently going to say, you know, he was going to play the I know nothing game, the Sergeant Schultz. Guess what? He knew something. He then had to admit it. Tonight, he's gone.
I've just started. I have just started. I mean, there is hundreds of thousands of pages of evidence. Good public servants in Victoria tonight should feel very comfortable if they did everything by the book. Those that want to cover up, and this is what it is, right? I wrote in my column in the weekend, when you make really momentous decisions in government, some of them you know are momentous at the time they're made. Others, it's only with hindsight that you appreciate, Paul, how significant the decision was. I don't think when they were thinking about, do we put Victoria Police or do we put private security in charge of these hotels, I don't think they appreciated how momentous it would be. I think they would have been better to think about it and you know, take a bit more advice and take their time, but they didn't. They did it all in about 18 hours. But it's the cover-up that kills you. And this is what this is. It's the cover-up that's gone on for months and months and months. And, you know, Alan Jones says you got to do your homework. And, you know, I am not many things. I've never claimed to be a journalist, but I am someone who reads the detail. Yeah, well, but I read the detail, right? I know where the bodies are buried, working in government, working in the Senate, working in estimates, to go looking through, you know, if someone gives you a pile of papers this big, Paul, you've got to go all the way through it, because the bigger the stack, the more they're trying to hide. You know, the more they're trying to bury something in there that's like an unexploded bomb.
Well, absolutely. And again, right, this is the thing, right? I'll deal with the media criticism and the Twitter bullshit in a second. Sorry, I'm a bogan. You know, I can't hold myself around such a classy lady. But I want to get to one of the absolute nub moments here,
I've got
Roman.
mine, so...
Yeah, good. Yeah, let's just get on the cans for the next hour. Let's see what happens. Now, let's talk about the Chief of Staff, because clearly there were only a very limited number of people who, in the timeline when Andrews was in National Cabinet and somebody came out of it, this bloke who's now gone came out of it, who was able to start passing messages around before Andrews left the room. That's why the focus is on the Chief of Staff.
And this is what my alarm bells went off. What I thought was very interesting was, I know that the meeting broke at 10 minutes past 1, but I thought it was extraordinary, because, you know, I've observed Cabinet for many years, that the head of the department and the Premier, who are the only ones in the room with all the other counterparts around the country and the PM in Canberra, that he left the room at 12 o'clock. Now, he says in his evidence that that's because he knew it was so momentous, they had to do it so quickly, he wanted to get a head start. Now, critically, the decisions were hotels, transport from the airport and security. But he says in evidence it was only the top two. And I'm thinking, well, that's unusual that you left. It's unusual that you're so careful to say it's contained to just these things. But then when you look through the evidence, and a lot of this stuff is dumped on a Friday night, you know, as I said, in lots and lots of paper, you got to dig your way through it. But you could see that from sort of about 12:30, there were a series of public service meetings all talking about security. And I'm thinking, well, the penny didn't drop initially, but National Cabinet hasn't even broken. I mean, there's been no announcement by the PM at 2:30 or by the Premier at 3:15. So how on earth did this get out? When Eccles said he left the room, I thought, aha. And he admits in evidence that he talked to a guy called Simon Femister, who's the secretary of a department that was going out doing this procurement and logistics. But buried deep inside his evidence, he also mentions he walks through the ante room, which is the room adjacent to the, and I know that Cabinet suite in Victoria, and there is the Chief of Staff. And he admits he briefed the Chief of Staff on everything that had been decided in the Cabinet. And of course, there's no mention of her again. We don't know whether she went back to the ante room, whether she hit the phones, whether she made decisions, whether she called people. You know, there are people with real questions over companies tonight that got $30, $40 million contracts that got sort of a heads up to do the training required to meet the threshold to get these contracts. And that all happened, Paul, before the PM walked into his own courtyard at 2:30 and announced this publicly to all Australians. And so the Chief of Staff is so critical. She's not given evidence. There's no phone records. This guy Femister's phone records are not in there. The police minister's phone records I have not even started. I've not even started. And good Labor people, can I tell you, good people are ringing me, encouraging me, saying, if this stands, if 800 people can die and no one takes responsibility, good Labor people say to me, this is a standard of government that we as Australians, as Victorians, we will never be able to walk back. So more strength to your arm. And I say to them, and I get choky about it, right? Because we've been combatants over the aisle for so many years in Canberra. But that shows me that somewhere underneath it, there's still good decency in public life.
Oh, absolutely. Because, you know, what is sending people wild? And look, I have the freedom of being able to come and go, right? I'm able to, you know, go and play in the sun. You, of course, locked up, you know, all of the family members that people can't see each other. Like, it's maddening, right? And they, you know, these little trinkets of, oh, he might do something, and he manages the 6 p.m. news beautifully, right? But the process that was set up to flush this out, now, either it is deeply flawed or something weirder was going on. As somebody who was able to do what you've been able to do by yourself with a bit of time, what does it say to us about just how incurious the inquiry has been to this point when they don't even ask for the phone records of, as you say, the lady sitting next to the room where Andrews is making the decision and the bureaucrats are walking out to tell everyone?
There's a saying, you never call an inquiry into something that you don't know the answer to. That's a common sort of line to people like me that worked inside a machine. Don't ask a question that you don't know the answer to. He carefully constructed the terms of reference. It's no mistake it's a Board of Inquiry under the Victorian Inquiries Act, that it doesn't have the powers of a Royal Commission.
You can lie to it.
He keeps correct. He keeps talking about you can't compel witnesses. You can't compel documents. Every document it has is a document they've been invited to put in. They haven't been forced under subpoena to put in. He talks about, when I was pushing him on Friday about the phone records, I mean, mate, if you've got nothing to hide, put them out there, right? But he says, I haven't been asked by the inquiry. Well, come on, you're the Premier. You say to the families of the 800 dead, you want to get to the bottom of the matter, but you won't proffer it up. You're waiting for a letter from somebody else. How serious are you? And the obfuscations. So what Labor did is they set up these industrial manslaughter laws in Victoria that came into law. They were sent to and started on the 1st of July. And there's been hell to play because these ministers now are so scared that they've been hung by their own, hoisted on their own petard with these laws, potentially. I think that's at the heart of the problem.
I agree completely. Now, look, you're going to feel a bit uncomfortable on TV here, but I'm going to say it in not just your defence, but in understanding of how this business works. All right? I've been doing this for a very long time, and it doesn't matter whether you've got the piece of paper or whether you've got, the little gold star. If somebody has knowledge of how the system is made and has the balls to confront the people who have played with that system, that person gets to sit at a press conference. Now, in the same way that people use former footballers or football coaches to give analysis or even ask questions about how that game works, or the same as we've turned to scientists in the media to talk about how coronavirus response should work, guess who I want to hear from about how the sausage is made in this case? The lady who knows what it is like at the federal level, at the state level, at the ministerial level, at the opposition leader level and at the government level. You were able to, in one day, get further than most of them had even got close. Now, some had got close, some had pushed, some were able to make a good mark. So tell me, where to from here, my friend? Do we see you there again tomorrow, the next day, or you go back, but every time we see Peta Credlin, get ready, because something's about to happen?
I've still got to do my show. So, last night I was up to 3:30 trying to trawl through this stuff that's, I think quite well hidden. Got to do my show. I'm going to turn up when I've got something that I want to ask the Premier about. I'm not there to fill up hours of my time and his time. I'm not going to be there as sort of a best supporting actress to the Dan show every day. But I swore on my show, I have a dear girlfriend who lost her 16-year-old son to suicide in this pandemic. I've got a mum in her 70s that I have not seen. I've seen once this year because of all the lockdowns. And I moved back to Melbourne to be with my mum. It's in the name of all these good people that are struggling in Victoria, and the businesses I know, they talk to me, that are going to the wall. I want to make his life as uncomfortable. I want him to know that I am on his hammer. He can't bully me. He can't threaten me with a pre-selection. He can't get his Twitter mob after me. I stand.
No, who cares?
Like the stuff that has been thrown about me and written about me in my life, Paul. This is water off a duck's back. So bring it on, Dan. Bring it on, Dan.
Yeah.
It's all about people in Victoria who are crying out for someone to go in there and ask the bloody questions that I know they're sitting at home asking. How could this happen here? And look at New South Wales, look at South Australia. I mean, the reason we're not going to get out of restrictions on the weekend, Paul, is because he has no confidence in his own contact tracing system, that it's still bloody fax machine and bits of paper.
PC,
that's what it is.
Yeah, I love you. I love your strength. I love your tenacity. And anyone who has a crack at her, you have a crack at me. And you got 120 kilos in your corner, mate. You know that all day, every day. I love you. Must watch stuff. 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Record this show because you're hearing what everyone else will be talking about a day later. Love you, darling. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Paul. Great to be back on the show.
Welcome back anytime. All right, the great Peta Credlin there.